Here we go again. I wasn't suspecting to make two data recordings on the same day, but I felt like that one kind of helps embrace or enhance the other towards what I'm talking about here. Defining the movements, 2021. Today is December the 31st. Unlike any other day, it's set aside towards being a special reverence day of putting away the old and bringing in the new. Or that's what they claim. The bad thing about it, it's only words that are not developing into actions. And we hear this again every year. Out with the old, in with the new. Out with the old, in with the new. Well, how come we're doing the exact same things today as what there was 30, 35, 40 years ago? How come we haven't evolved? How come we're still burning basically fossil oil fuel burning automobiles and trucks and tractors and combines and boats and all the above the same today as we was 30, 35, 40 years ago? Oh, they've made a little bit of an input towards building electric cars, battery cars, hybrid vehicles, windmills, and a few solar panels. But more in actuality, they're only teasing the subject. You know, this year was probably one of the worst years that I have seen. All the horrendous California fires that just devastated community after community after community, that we all had to sit over here on this side of the Mississippi and watch, and there wasn't nothing, absolutely nothing that we could do about it other than maybe making a telephone call or contributing some money to somebody pertaining to Red Cross or some of the above over there. But we've not only seen that, but we've seen the coastline being bombarded again and again and again pertaining to the massive hurricanes. And we've seen all other kinds of floods and tornadoes. We've seen a heat dome get so hot in America that it broke all-time records, not only up in Oregon and Washington State, but also up in Canada. People has literally died on account of these incidences that continue to keep happening. We've also seen COVID expand and detract, and now COVID is expanding again with a different strand. We have seen the United States military pull out of a 20-year war that basically within 11 days turned everything that they had done, or we have done, into nothing but a mockery pertaining to the very people that we was fighting up against, turned right around and took back over their country. We have seen hardship, calamity after calamity after calamity. And of course, just recently, within the past 3 weeks, December the 10th, an outburst of tornadoes broke out, not only in Missouri, but also in parts of Arkansas, that come up through the Mississippi, that come up through Kentucky, that stayed on the ground for almost 250 miles, which was unheard of, broke all kinds of records. One come up through here, hit Obion County real bad, hit Lake County real bad, hit Weakley County real bad, hit several counties in the state of Tennessee that never did really meet that headline type approach, but it still devastated family after family after family pertaining to these outlandish storms. A matter of fact, they claim that some of them actually went south and went below Memphis over into the Mississippi area a little bit. I don't know if those were straight line winds or what. But what you're fixing to see, the next program that you're fixing to see here on TV, is just another phenomenon, a abrupt situation that the Homo sapiens down here have created by draining all the oil out of the platelets below our feet that's supposed to be there to protect us from the heat that expands out of the core that generates to the outside of the earth, we are dismissing or taking away, distracting that oil that was put there for a shield. And it was also put there to help hold down the friction pertaining to the platelets that move back and forth, the oceans that come in and out, the high tide, the low tide. You know, this world is constantly in friction. It's constantly in motion in some form or another. You may not can see it, you may not can feel it, but it's actually moving and twisting and and distributing its energy in different places at different times, and that's basically what causes the earthquakes, and that's basically what causes the volcanoes. Well, if you're constantly taking the oil out of those platelets, and even though they may replace it with water, it still don't have the density to it that oil does. You're creating more friction. If you're creating more friction, you're creating more heat. What are the places that it's heating up the most? The deep, deep immense places of the ocean going down 4, 5, 6 miles deep. We know for a fact that we found places down there 15 to 1800 degrees Celsius. That's basically just constantly heating up the bottom part of the ocean, just like if you was to put a pail of water on top of your burner and turn it on. Every contributing factor contributes to something else that man is constantly doing to the planet Earth, in addition to what we're doing to each other, in addition to disrespecting our Creator. I mean, it ain't going to be too much longer until the white polar bears up in the North Pole probably won't even exist. I hate to say that. And then you got the penguins, and you got other kind of life up there that has become adapted to that type of climate. And now whenever you take that type of climate away, they won't be able to exist. As little as the past couple of days, 48 hours, I'm going to use 48 hours for terminology here, there has been an outlandish phenomenon happen over in Boulder, Colorado, of 110-mile-an-hour winds. Keep in mind, about 3 weeks ago, I think it was the 11th of December, maybe the 12th, is whenever straight line winds come out of Colorado that done substantial damage to places like up in Kansas and up to other parts of the country, that basically these straight line winds created or helped to create all the storms that hit up in the area where for the first time they had a tornado way, way, way up north, the first time in December that they've ever had a tornado. So it's breaking records. But what I'm getting at is that this heat that is generated is helped to create the droughts. The droughts that is now substantially made the fields, made the crops, made the trees do without, similar to what went on out in California and Oregon this year. Of course, they're being bombarded with snow right now and mudslides. I mean, you can't have the best of the two worlds all the time. They need the snowfall to help fill up the reservoirs. But what I'm seeing and what I'm trying to make a point at is what we're seeing is the weather going from one extreme to another. Like right now, it's supposed to get about 72 degrees today here. They've already got flash flood warnings that's supposed to begin tonight, and they're already putting up red flags because of the cold front meeting the hot air here this time of year, that it's always a possibility that it could create not just storms but tornadoes again. I hope it don't, but it could. So they're already putting out advisories telling people that. Okay? What you're fixing to witness here pertaining to what happened out in Boulder, Colorado is it's a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching scenario, especially this close to the holidays. You keep in mind that the town up above me in Mayfield, Kentucky, that has a residency of about 10 or 12,000 just got hit, that destroyed about 1,500 homes. Kenton, Tennessee over here, I was told that it got about 40 homes destroyed. Weakley County, the same county that I'm in right here, Up in Dresden, Tennessee, I was told that it destroyed over 100 structures up in Dresden, Tennessee. I don't know if that was counting county-wide or just in the city limits. So what you're fixing to witness here is excruciating. It's painful. And it's extremely, extremely sad, because Jesus said that in the last days that we would see signs up in the heavens and signs up on the earth such as mankind has never seen before. And that these would be the great sorrows that would fall upon the humanity in the last days. And if we want to see and continue to see these things continue to happen and escalate, all we got to do is continue to stay on the same track that we're on, expecting for different results, but we're not willing to compromise in draining all the oil resources, the commodities out of the ground. And because of it, we're going to see storms, floods, fires, droughts, diseases, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, and all the above that are only going to intensify not only in strength, but are going to intensify as far as frequency. Please watch this. It is so sad. The day before New Year's.
Saturday on CNN.
I'm Christiana Monfour in London, and this is CNN.
Welcome back. Days after Christmas, hundreds of people in the U.S. state of Colorado have lost almost everything. Ferocious wildfire fueled by historically high winds and dry conditions tore through neighborhoods near Denver Thursday. Several hundred homes burned to the ground. Thousands of people are evacuated. Thousands are also without power. While the winds have died down and the flames have subsided, smoke is still heavy in the area, and we're just beginning to learn the scope of the destruction. Well, colder weather is moving into the area today, and with it some snow. Natasha Chen is in Superior, a town hit hard by the fires. And Natasha, heading into New Year's tonight, plenty of people, tens of thousands in Colorado that have been evacuated, and many families who no longer have a home.
Right, Linda, they have lost so much. At least 500 homes are known to have been destroyed, although 2,000 homes were in that burn area. So as they find out more of the extent of the destruction, more and more people, perhaps some who were on holiday away from home, are going to come back and find nothing left for them. In fact, one assistant football coach at the University of Colorado Boulder said that he lost every material possession he owned. He's going to have to start over completely. And we're hearing more stories like that. In addition to the stories of people who had to flee with just minutes' notice, some of them recording those scary moments as they left. There was just debris and ash raining on them. The visibility was very poor. One person said that he could barely see 10 feet in front of him. Another woman saying that as she was driving away, a trash can hit her car. Just an example of how strong those hurricane-force winds really were. Now, as you mentioned, it is snowing today. The flurries are a bit light right now, but that is helping with bringing more moisture to the area. Though we have seeing the town below us, the town of Superior below us, that throughout the day there still have been smoke plumes showing where the hot spots are still located as the fire crews continue to work, Linda.
And I'm wondering behind you whether that is smoke or whether that is the snow flurries. Can you give us a sense of what we're seeing?
It depends. Depends on what time of day we're talking about, Linda. Right at this moment, we're probably talking about more snow than smoke, but it's probably a mix at this point. Earlier today, you could see a bit more clearly just different puffs of smoke and rising from a couple of different areas there. This is still a very active situation. And of course, while the snow brings more moisture, which helps calm down perhaps some of those flames, it also does make the cleanup process a bit more difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Well, our thoughts are with all those families in evacuation.
See, whenever I was out there, I've stayed twice in the Denver, Colorado area, and then I stayed one time up in Basalt, Colorado, pretty close to Aspen, Colorado. Whenever I was up there, they had a tremendous problem with not only the droughting situation, but they had a tremendous problem pertaining to the beetles. For some reason, they have had an outburst of they've just been inundated by all these bugs, and these bugs get in their trees and their cypress trees and all their other trees are not cypress trees, but I can't even think of the name right now. But anyways, it's killing their vegetation. So between the bugs and the droughts, you basically have a recipe here for a disaster. And if you add that with the fallen lines that fell because of the 110-mile-an-hour hurricane force type winds, now you got a perfect storm. You got dead trees, you got dried up vegetation, you got 110-mile-an-hour winds, you got major power lines that fell that created the sparks that started all the fires. And because of it, I was told, I don't know how true it is, that it's actually touching more like 600 houses versus just saying that it was over 500. I don't know how accurate that those numbers are. You know, I would like to believe that they're not accurate. I'd like to believe that it was much less than that, because just one family, one house burning is horrible enough, much less when you take a whole neighborhood like that that's been desecrated. Absolutely desecrated. And of course, the same thing, we've seen the same thing out in places like Oregon and California this year, towards massive, massive fires that just destroyed one neighborhood after another, one community after another. That is just so sad in watching these things occur. But on the other hand, it's just as sad towards us watching all the tropical storms that come up through Houston, Texas, and flooded this and flooded that, and flooded Louisiana, and then Louisiana got hit by all those hurricanes last year again and again and again, and then down towards southern Louisiana, I think they got hit again by a couple more hurricanes this year, 2 or 3 hurricanes back to back. I mean, what we're seeing is problem after problem after problem, calamity after calamity, that as far as I am concerned, and this is my analogy of all this, it's increasing. It's gotten worse. Not only has it gotten worse as far as the intensity of it, as far as what it's doing, but it's gotten worse as far as the frequency of it. It's become more and more frequent towards watching these horrors that are basically coming out of the consequences of what we're doing to the planet Earth. I know that insurance companies and other people like to blame everything on God. Oh, it's an act of God because a tree limb fell on your car. Oh, it was an act of God that created the drought, that created the fires. Well, they didn't think that down there in southern Mississippi whenever Hurricane Katrina fumigated a 30 to a 40-foot wall of water and come in there on top of those people and took out all their homes and all their livelihoods. And then the insurance companies wouldn't pay off because they said they didn't have flood insurance. Well, what created the flood? It was 200-mile-an-hour winds, a Category 5 hurricane. But yet, no, the insurance company got away with going down there and destroying family after family after family down in the Louisiana area during Katrina. I truly believe that the oil that we are steadily draining from the earth, that oil was put there for a shield not only to protect us from the heat, but a shield to keep things greased up whenever you got these platelets that's moving around constantly in motion up and down and back and forth, that as you dissipate the oil, you increase the friction. As you increase the friction, you increase the heat. As you increase the heat, you warm up the waters in the ocean. As you warm up the waters in the ocean, then you have more instability with our atmosphere. As the heat increases, it also affects the poles. It also affects people up in places that has never had this type of heat, like Canada and Alaska, Russia this year. over in their northern continent had all kinds of fires that broke out this year, basically killing the trees. Well, what's the trees do? The trees help create oxygen. What does the oxygen do? It provides a life stimulus for us to live off of so that we can be self-sustainable. It also helps to control the environment. If you cut down all the trees, not only is our health going to decline, not only is people not going to have enough air to breathe, but now you're influencing towards the atmosphere becoming more and more erratical. As the atmosphere becomes erratical, you're going to see more things like we've been seeing until there is a major, major movement to change the way that we are treating the earth and treating each other and the way that we're respecting God Almighty. Until we see a changeover in that, we can expect more and more devastation that will only increase every year until God finally gets enough of it and says, you know what? That's enough. Let's throw our towel in. Let's declare this as a lost cause, the same as he did with Noah, and let's take them out. The only problem is, or the only thing is, whenever God gets ready to do it this time, he's not going to do it with water. He's going to do it with fire and brimstone. He's going to bring fire into the earth that will devastate anything that's ever been built commercially or residentially and burn it down to the ground. What's going to happen whenever he burns it all down to the ground, whenever he circles all over the earth to gather his elect? All the smoke is going to rise into the atmosphere. If the smoke rises into the atmosphere, what's going to happen to the moon? What's going to happen to the sun? What does it take to make agriculture grow properly pertaining to being able to feed our cows and our chickens? It takes crops. What does it take for crops to grow? It takes water, but it also takes sun. And if you don't have proper sun, you won't have good crops. I think you pretty well get the idea towards what I'm trying to say here of what we're basically doing to ourselves. Because it's not in actuality God that's doing it. God is allowing for it to be done, okay, out of probably multiple thousands of different reasons. But the fact of the matter is, it is Satan that is coming down in strongholds, just like the Bible talks about in the last days, that Satan will come down in great wrath because he knows or realizes that his days are short. He realizes that he has failed in this competition toward trying to defeat God, and because he's failed, he's a sore loser, and now he's bringing that much more wrath and that much more destruction into mankind, pertaining to diseases, pertaining to people that's going crazy with guns, pertaining to all the suicides and the gun violence, pertaining to all the disruptions in countries towards international affairs. I could go on and on and on. So, ending in December the 31st, right here at New Year's is just right around the corner within the next, I guess within the next 10 hours, or right at 10 hours, New Year's will be here. It's a really very, very sour note of how that we're taking out the trash as far as leaving 2021 behind us. That was so rough, that was so abrupt, that was so cruel, that was so inhumane, that was so life challenging in not just America but all over the planet. That now we're walking into a new year, and I hate to say it, folks, but we're actually starting out on the wrong foot. We're starting out on the wrong foot because of seeing stuff like we're seeing and stuff that we've seen December the 10th and other catastrophics that is continually bombarding the Philippines and other types of major storms that I've seen on the Weather Channel on my telephone, that these things are intensifying and they're getting worse. So I really don't know what to say other than to tell people in my warnings of electrical disturbances. Of course, electrical disturbances can come in the form of windstorms, ice storms, major blackouts pertaining to freezes. It can come in the form of droughts pertaining to fires. Windstorms can come in the form of tornadoes. Electrical disturbances can come in the form of tornadoes and other factors such as solar flares and meteor displacements. Of the predictions that I made trying to warn the people up in western Kentucky in 2007, long about June or July, and since then I have seen occurrence after occurrence, calamity after calamity that has continued to bombard America with more and more electrical disturbances. In addition to our grids being old, in addition to our grids being overworked, in addition to us being vulnerable towards, instead of putting all our lines under the ground, we put them on top of the ground. We are in a very, very vulnerable state right now towards basically being put to our knees because of what that we are doing subsequently to the planet and what we are doing to each other and what we're doing to the Creator that created all this. God is allowing for these things to occur for a reason, for a purpose. Now it's up to us to figure out what that purpose or what that reason is. God, why have you turned your back on us? God, why ain't you no longer protecting us? God responds back, well, if you're not going to treat me no better than you've been treating me, if you're not going to honor me or my son, if you're going to continue to bite the hand that's feeding you towards taking care of your crops and the hand that's feeding you towards protecting you from all these things, shield you from all these things, I'll just quit protecting you. I'll just quit feeding you. Just as the old saying goes that if you continue to bite the hand that feeds you, the hand will eventually quit feeding you. That's where we are in America. That's where we are in the planet, on the planet called Earth, that the earthlings call Earth, the Homo sapiens. And if we don't wake up to this in time, once it exceeds a certain level, then is whenever God looks at it as a lost cause, and then is whenever doomsday will come, whenever God returns back with an attitude, with the Son being on the right hand of him, he'll come back in flaming fire, taking vengeance upon them who know not God and upon them who obey not the gospel, and he'll burn it down to the ground. In other words, at that time, it will be God's method or approach towards if I can't get them to serve me at this level, all I can do is get them to the point that they regret that they didn't serve me. And I've always said that again and again and again, that God is not the type of God that's going to make you or anybody else serve him. As far as serving him in a righteous, sincere way. But what he will do, he will pull the biscuit out of your mouth. He will remove that shelter away from you. He will cause calamities in your neighborhood or in your state or in your country to the point that, okay, he couldn't get you to serve him, but what he has done, he has opened your eyes to the degree that now you regret that you did not serve him. Now you regret that you was not earnest and sincere in worshiping him and being a subservient into him and for him. That's what God can do. Once more, God did not ask originally to bring pain and penalty to the human race. It was only after Satan, the demonic spirit that contaminated the Garden of Eden, whenever he tricked Adam and Eve of doing what that they had done, it wasn't until that point in time whenever God even thought about bringing punishment to his own creation. Because whenever these calamities happen, and it affects humanity, you keep in mind it just doesn't affect the Homo sapiens, but it affects the birds, it affects the deer, it affects the squirrels, it affects the rabbits, it affects any other type of wildlife, raccoons, all the above, including fish, because if you're contaminating the waters, it's going to affect the fish. But it affects other parts of his creation. So God is not doing this. We're doing it to ourselves, just as the Bible teaches us that God is the creator and not the destroyer, and it's Satan that's out to kill, steal, and destroy, not God. It's Satan that is the author of confusion towards people not knowing heads from tails, towards whether or not they're going or they're coming, basically not knowing their rear ends from a hole in the ground. Let's watch the rest of this once more. The founder of the Windmill Ministries that is speaking right now would like to say Happy New Year to everybody in 2022. The big 2-2, the triple 2 is now coming into power pertaining to the last day prophecies. Please, 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 whoever gets a hold of this, spread the word. Tell people that it's not too late, but we're getting close.
And certainly those that have lost their homes. Natasha Chen, thanks very much. Well, it's certainly been an interesting year, and with the news cycle moving so quickly, you'd be forgiven if some of the events of 2021 have slipped your mind. CNN's chief international correspondent Clarissa Ward reminds us of the year's top 10 news stories.
As 2021 comes to a close, so does another tumultuous year. At number 10, the bombshell interview that put the British royal family in an unwelcome spotlight.
Concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
Prince Harry and his wife, Duchess of Sussex, opened up to Oprah in a 2-hour TV special, speaking freely for the first time since walking away from a life as working royals.
Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, opening up to Oprah Winfrey about being singled out. She believes forced out of the royal family.
A month after the explosive broadcast, Queen Elizabeth's husband, Prince Philip, died at the age of 99.
Tonight, a shocked and saddened nation remembers the legacy of an irreplaceable figurehead.
Number 9.
Hours after Haiti's president was assassinated, gunfire still crackled through Port-au-Prince.
The assassination of Jovenel Moïse took place against a background of extreme violence in the capital, Port-au-Prince.
There are at least 17 people detained at this point.
Number 8. The conflict in the Middle East came to a head once again this spring and turned into one of the worst rounds of violence between the two sides in years.
It's a pattern that shouldn't be familiar, yet already is. Hamas and Islamic Jihad rockets streaking across the sky from Gaza.
Airstrikes and rocket barrages, artillery and mortar fire. Hundreds of people dead and more than 2,000 wounded.
The conflict lasted 11 days before Israel and the Palestinian group Hamas agreed to a ceasefire. Israeli airstrikes killed more than 250 Palestinians, including dozens of children. Palestinian militant fire from Gaza killed 13 Israelis, including children. Number 7. Myanmar's military junta seized power in a coup, ousting de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi.
Clarissa Ward and her team were the first Western TV journalists allowed into the country since the coup.
After days of pushing, we are allowed to visit a public space, an open market. As word of our presence spreads, we hear an unmistakable sound. Banging pots and pans has become the signature sound of resistance.
We want democracy, we don't want military coup.
Since the February coup, the military has killed more than 1,300 people and arrested more than 10,000, according to an advocacy group. Number 6, a powerful CNN investigation sheds light on a raging civil war.
The Ethiopian government has waged war against Tigray's ousted regional leaders for the last 5 months, with the help of neighboring Eritrea.
CNN was one of the only Western media outlets to travel to the country.
3 bodies were found down at the riverfront.
To investigate reports of mass killings.
One by one, they enter the church, carrying in sacks all that's left of loved ones executed by Ethiopian soldiers. This is fresh evidence of a January massacre.
In late April, a CNN team traveling through Tigray witnessed Eritrean soldiers, some disguising themselves in old Ethiopian military uniforms, cutting off critical aid routes to starving communities.
CNN, we're CNN, journalists.
Eritrea's government has denied any involvement in atrocities, and Ethiopia's government has pledged investigations into any wrongdoing. But the bloody conflict rages on, spilling into other parts of the country, raising fears of an all-out war. Number 5, turmoil at European borders. Shocking images of thousands of migrants stranded on the Belarus-Poland border in freezing conditions, desperate to make it into the European Union. The situation at times surging out of control.
Because Poland has sealed the border and now has 15,000 troops here to make sure that no one can pass, Jake.
European leaders have accused Belarus of manufacturing the crisis as retribution, with sanctions over human rights abuses, a claim Belarus denies. The year ends with tensions between Ukraine and Russia at their highest in years, with a massive buildup of Russian forces along the Ukrainian border, fueling fears over Moscow's intentions. Number 4, Chinese leader Xi Jinping's steel grip on power tightened.
David, how has President Xi been able to cement his hold on power for so long?
It really sets him up as the undisputed supreme ruler for years to come.
And with this, an ever more assertive China. 2021 saw sophisticated propaganda campaigns to deflect criticism over allegations of human rights abuses in Xinjiang, the arrest of pro-democracy activists and former lawmakers in Hong Kong, as well as aggressive military maneuvers aimed at Taiwan.
This island is potential flashpoint for what their president calls a fight between authoritarian China and democratic Taiwan, allied with the United States.
Number 3.
Protest rallies across Russia today in support of detained Kremlin opposition activist Alexei Navalny.
Russia's best-known opposition politician Alexei Navalny sent to a penal colony, where he dared to return home 5 months after a near-fatal nerve agent attack.
Shortly before his detention, Navalny saying he's not scared.
Я не боюсь.
Number 2. The new year brought with it great hopes for an end to the COVID-19 pandemic, ushering in of widespread vaccinations. But the virus continued to mutate, killing millions of people around the world. The uneven vaccine rollout hasn't kept up with the speed of the spreading virus, especially in poorer countries.
In Delhi now, you're never far from heartbreak. Almost everyone in the city has been visited by grief.
Despite high vaccination rates, Europe became the epicenter of the pandemic once again this winter. The 4th wave of COVID-19 is now sweeping across the continent, with lockdowns reinstated in some countries. Across Europe, protests against mandates and health passes have drawn tens of thousands of people. In November, South African scientists discovered the new Omicron variant. It has since spread around the globe. Number 1, the last U.S. military planes left Afghanistan, marking the end of its longest war. They took this city of 6 million people in a matter of hours, barely firing a shot.
This is a sight I honestly thought I would never see. Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy compound.
Thousands scrambling to leave before the U.S. military exit.
They're saying they all worked at American camps as translators for the Americans, and they can't get into that airport.
A terrorist attack at the Kabul airport killed 13 U.S. service members and more than 170 Afghans during the evacuation. And there's no question, everybody here is doing their best, but it's not clear if it's fast enough. The collapse of Afghanistan's U.S.-backed government was perhaps the most damaging setback. It was a blow to U.S. credibility and to democratic advances, especially on women's rights and media freedoms, which were stifled overnight.
Thanks to Clarissa. Well, still to come tonight, world leaders are sharing their goals for 2022. We'll see what policy moves we should expect in the year ahead.
Okay.
Lanice is just 6 years old.
Now you've just seen
6 years.
You've seen the Big Ten out of various humanitarian problems throughout the world. But they didn't show not once in regards to various earthquakes, other types of calamities as far as fires, tornadoes. This is all man-made generated stuff right here that we've just got through witnessing pertaining to the Big Ten. And I'm sure that there was more than just these incidences, and I know that there was, other than the Big Ten. They just didn't have enough room, or didn't feel like that they had enough room to put it all into play. Okay? The bottom line that I'm trying to make a point at is this. Between the natural catastrophes, between all the man-made catastrophes, we as a society upon this planet are heading in the wrong direction pertaining to peace and utopia that is promised through and by the Holy Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. It's almost as if society is deliberately doing this, shaking their fist in the face of God and saying, we dare you. We dare you to do what you promised that you would do towards coming back and burning down everything and creating great tribulation for the earthlings down here, for the Homo sapiens down here. Well, you know what? I was always told that if you knock on the devil's door long enough and hard enough, and I ain't necessarily calling God the devil, because by no means is God the devil, but if you continue to keep agitating and aggravating the problem again and again and again, instead of the problem becoming less of a problem, it's actually going to become more of a problem. And if you continue to do that, it creates another problem that will escalate into another problem, and before long, you got multiple problems. Well, that's where we are today in society in regards to all this hullabaloo that continues to keep bombarding the earthlings again and again and again, regardless whether it's man-made problems or regardless whether it's natural catastrophe problems. We are in the direction towards doomsday. This is not peace and utopia, true peace and utopia that the Bible talks about pertaining to the opening of the second seal. Once more, if we want to continue to make this path tough and hard on each other, that's one thing. But as we're making it tough and hard on each other, keep in mind we're also making it tough and hard on the innocent pertaining to our children, the lives of the innocent, that now these burdens are falling not just upon to the guilty, but upon to the innocent. And we have no one to blame but ourselves, because we would not render. We would not conform. We would not support true peace. We support a so-called peace. We talk the name peace almost every day. But in reality, for the past 30 plus years, since the Reagan and the Bush administration didn't do what they should have done during the time of true peace. Because of it, now we're all paying the consequences in regards to this. This has been so sad that I have had to sit back and witness this, knowing that if things was properly handled in the proper way, going back into the late 80s, we would all be experiencing prosperity, peace, and utopia. But now, since the conglomerates has got involved, pertaining to wanting to be greedy and selfish, and now that all these natural catastrophes have befallen up into our lives, not just here in America, but throughout the planet, now we're witnessing horror that we've never witnessed anything like before. Please, please, pray for those who have been affected, either directly or indirectly, through these horrors that has befallen upon society. Please pray for peace, and please pray that this message that God has given to me to give to the world will be a message that will be taken very, very serious, not because of my doings, but because of his doings, and because it's a better way of life, rather than to beat one another's brains out and to kill one another and to fight like a bunch of cats and dogs. It's a whole lot better life if we can all get along, either nationally or locally, and put an end to all this corruption, all this stuff, this horror stuff that continues to keep happening in regards to the sorrows. And hopefully, before my lifetime is over, we can actually witness, experience a true, not a so-called, but a true, authentic, anointed, God-driven, Holy Spirit-filled peace. But until we're willing to listen, and until we're willing to conform, I'm just afraid that it's going to get worse. So you may be asking yourself, well, what's your point, Dennis? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say, Juby? I'm trying to say this. It's up to we the people, and how hot it gets, how rough it gets, and how bad it gets. And just like I got through talking to one of my helpers a while ago, that helps me in ending a conversation in 2021, leading into 22. As far as I know, to this day, in Northwest Tennessee, the Windmill Ministries does not have a Joel Osteen support team. We've got imitators. We've got people that try to act like that they're concerned about society, is in the aspect of peace, that's been now in these predominant positions for 35, 40 years, and in reality, they're the ones that we should be blaming, because they didn't allow for this message to take a toehold, in addition to how that they have set back and allowed for the founder to continue to get roughed up again and again and again. The fault falls upon the feet of those that could and did have the power. They had the influences to be able to do something about all this, and they chose willfully, intentionally, to set back and allow it to grow worse. So whenever I personally see these things, I weep, I cry, I get distraught, because I can not only look and see where society would have been different if it was handled differently through the Reagan and the Bush administration, but I can look and see, similar towards the fires that has recently happened out in Denver, Colorado. You know good and well that not all them people evacuated that area because they didn't have time to evacuate that area. Some of the people was dead asleep. Some of the people was sick. They was on oxygen. Some of the people just didn't hear the call towards getting up and getting out of there, and I'm pretty sure they're going to find casualties after it's all said and done with. Whenever they get through digging through all the debris, they're going to find missing people, and they're going to find people that has died over the horrors that has just befallen up into Denver, Colorado. They didn't have time, just like the people up in Kentucky. You know, ordinarily, whenever you have a hurricane, you have at least 2 or 3 days to get ready to prepare. That way, those that want to evacuate can evacuate. Well, the people up in Kentucky, they didn't have that. They didn't have that golden opportunity. It caught them off guard. A matter of fact, a great deal of them didn't even have a clue what was fixing to happen in their lives. And I'm just going to use this one family as an example. I got some friends up in Dresden with me living here in Wake County that went through a very, very remorseful situation pertaining to their house being blown away. They had recently went to sleep, didn't take no good notice in what was going on with the weather report that afternoon, and they fell soundly asleep. It wasn't until about 3 minutes before the tornado actually hit before their alarms went off on their phones. Well, some people put their phones on pause. Some people put do not disturb on their phones. Some people turn their phones completely off. And because the way I understand it, the sirens never went off in Dresden, Tennessee, because they didn't have none. Now, that's what was told to me. I don't know how true that is. The sirens never went off. So basically, their house basically just exploded. All 4 walls got torn out all at one time, and the roof come down while they was laying in the bed, and they got lucky towards the velocity of the wind, pushed both of them out of the bed on each side, and they had to crawl out of a space of about 2 foot just to get back out of all the rubble. And whenever they got their head out, they looked around and thought that a nuclear bomb had went off. As far as I know, by the hand of God, God protected them people up in Dresden, Tennessee, and Weakley County, Tennessee, from any casualties. As far as I know, that was a mere miracle. Because if you'll look at the type of devastation that they received there in Dresden, they should have had at least 3 or 4 or more fatalities out of all that damage. Once more, these occurrences are getting worse. They're not getting better, they're getting worse. And until we're willing to open our eyes, and until we're willing to do something about the calamities, I'm just afraid they're going to continue to get worse and worse, either by the sorrows that's coming out of the sky pertaining to the wrath of Satan, or they're going to continue to grow worse pertaining to the instabilities of humanity. Good luck to all of us as we end each program every time. Good luck to each and every one of us. We pray that everybody will have a safe, healthy, enlightening, prosperity future in 2020. And we pray that that we'll be able to turn it around pertaining to a revival, a spiritual awakening that will lead into a revolution, and that eventually we will be able to sustain that in which what has been promised by our Heavenly Father, not through the windmill ministries, not through one particular individual, but through the Bible, before the opening of the 2nd seal, that there will be peace, a temporary peace that will fall upon to humanity in every state, in every nation, in every country, up onto the planet called Earth. That's what we're praying for, is a mighty, mighty movement of God in these last days. Just as the scriptures teaches us in Acts, that in the last days, God will pour out his Spirit upon all flesh, and that the meek will inherit the earth. The meek are God's people. The meek are those who are seeking God's will, who are trying to walk a life of holiness and righteousness through Christ. The meek are those who are humble and those who try to share the light with others through the blood of Jesus Christ. Once more, we want to thank you for
Welcome back. Days after Christmas, hundreds of people
for being a part of allowing for us to be part of your families. Once more, by looking at these horror situations that are developing, we are the perpetrators that is consequently developing them. These are the consequences involved in draining all the oil out, putting all the carbon dioxide up into the air. These are the consequences that are creating floods, fires, earthquakes, tremendous weather events like we have never ever seen before. We've never seen a tornado get on the ground for almost 250 miles. That's the first one that's ever been recorded, is that. Good luck to all of us. And in the year 2020, Happy New Year and Shalom. The Ring of Fire. These people had no chance. They barely had time to get out of their house, much less gather up any pictures, any clothes, any personal possessions. And some of them, I'm sure, didn't make it, just like a major tornado. The Ring of Fire. For Christ said that he would not destroy, his heavenly Father would not destroy the world again by a flood, but the next time would be by fire and brimstone. Now we're seeing the fire. It's just a matter of time before we see the brimstone. Good luck to all of us. With tears of despair, heartbreaking moments that has bombarded the world in the past few years, especially in 2021.